We'll get started this morning. It's good to see everybody out with us. Hope you have had a good week. As you can tell today, you have got a substitute teacher for the auditorium class this morning. I know that we probably have a number of online viewers for our normal Sunday morning Bible class in addition to those who gather physically here. And that is due to the fact that the Barrows are up in Sevierville at Polishing the Pulpit this weekend. And he had asked me to fill in for him. And so if you've got a Bible this morning, we will not be in the book of Exodus, which he has been working through. But rather, we're going to be in the Gospel account of John. John chapter 2 especially is where we will camp today for our Bible study. We'll mention a number of announcements at the worship hour, so I'll not go over a lot of those things this morning. Outside to simply say that tonight we will have, I don't know, good old-fashioned singing is probably not the right way to say it because that invokes a lot of memories. I grew up in a small congregation in Walker County with a block building, and we had low ceilings, and so when I think good old-fashioned singing, that's kind of what I think about. Obviously, we don't have a block building and low ceilings and things of that nature, but the idea being tonight that we have had singing classes where we learn new songs throughout the summer. I think we've had 3 of those occasions. Tonight will be a singing where all of the boys and men of the congregation will have an opportunity to lead a song. And so that's what we mean by that good old-fashioned singing. So that will be on tap at 5 o'clock. That will be our PM activity. I've asked Brother Joe Taylor, if he will, to lead us in a word of prayer to get started this morning. We'll turn things over to him, and then we'll move to our study today. All righty, John chapter 2, we will begin in just a few moments in verse number 1. You know, in life there are some things that, if you will, are created that we use for reasons other than they were intended. For instance, I dare say that probably a few of us in this auditorium this morning, we have a treadmill at home. And you and I both know the intended purpose of a treadmill is to get some exercise and to promote walking and things of that nature. But sometimes the treadmill at our house becomes a celebrated clothes hanger where you drape things over it. And so probably never in the imaginations of those people that invented the idea of a treadmill did they think, well, this is going to be a clothes hanger. That's probably something they never envisioned. Many of us have vehicles that have roomy side pockets on the doors. That's another thing that sometimes we use differently than maybe that's intended. I imagine car makers, when they put those pockets on the side doors, a lot of them have a cup holder, right? So some kind of beverage, maybe the morning coffee or a canned Coke, something like that. We use, that side pocket for that purpose to hold that. It may be that we have some other things. I know in one of our vehicles we have a mechanism by which you can break the glass if you happen to go off into water to be able to get out with the pressure that would be placed upon the windows there. But I dare say again that there's some of us, at least in this auditorium, that's not really what we use those side pockets for. It has become, in many ways, the garbage can for our cars, right? So that's another thing that sometimes is used for purposes probably not really intended. I'm going to hold up something else too. Plastic bags, right? We get those in a lot of stores that we go, right? Replaced a lot of the paper bags many years ago. What were they produced for? What were they made for? Well, they were primarily made to be able to carry more easily things that would be purchased, whether it's groceries, whether it's clothing, whatever the case may be. But I'm going to guess that if you've taken a trip probably in the last 6 months, it's very likely that it kind of doubled as a suitcase for you, right? Again, probably the people who invented the plastic bag said, that's not really the reason why this was intended to be produced and marketed. I want us to kind of think about that light as we get into John chapter 2 this morning. If you know anything about John chapter 2, Jesus is going to turn water to wine. It's going to be a miraculous deed that Jesus does. If you've been a member of the Lord's church for many years, what is the purpose most of the time we reference this passage? Anybody know? And y'all can't be silent this morning. Why do we reference and teach on this passage oftentimes? All right. It's a miracle, but in my lifetime as a member of the church, that's not usually why we come and we focus on this passage. Anybody have an idea? We use this passage oftentimes to talk about the subject of what? The use of alcohol, right? Now, I don't want to discount the fact that this passage doesn't have some important things to consider when it comes to the idea of alcoholic beverages and whether or not we have the authority given by God to consume those in today's day and time. There is some value there. But if you went back to the original scope of the book of John, that is not the intended major purpose for this passage. The intended major purpose for this passage is exactly what Brother Joe mentioned. It is to talk about the miraculous deeds of Jesus. Now, how do we know that? Well, when you go to chapter 20, verses 30 through 31, there is, if you will, a mission statement that John makes that summarizes why this gospel account has been penned. This is what John 20, verse 30 and 31 says. Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But, notice, these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Okay, so when John gets to the end of his gospel account, what he says basically is the reason I have written these things, and if you know anything about John compared to the synoptic gospel accounts, that's Matthew, Mark, and Luke, there's a lot of similarities there. There is a lot of unique material that is found in the gospel account of John. It is also not written per se chronologically in the same kind of order and the same kind of events as compared to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And you might ask the question, John, why did the Holy Spirit lead you to write in this way? John, his answer would be, my purpose is very singular in nature. I have written to you, recorded these signs. By the way, signs is another word for miracles or miraculous deeds. I have recorded these of all of the miracles that Jesus did so that you would believe in Jesus Christ as the Messiah and that you would come to a saving faith in Him. Okay, so John's intent for this gospel account is for individuals to look back and see all of the things that Jesus did. He's going to produce many miracles here besides the water to wine in chapter 2. There's an official son that's going to be healed in chapter 4, the healing of an invalid at the pool of Bethesda in chapter 5. Chapter 6, the feeding of the 5,000. He's going to walk on water in chapter 6 as well. He's going to heal a blind man from birth in chapter 9. And then he's going to raise Lazarus from the dead in chapter 11. And obviously, he will be raised from the grave by his heavenly Father after he has been crucified and entombed. All of these things, John says, I write down so that you would read them and come to the belief that Jesus is the Son of God, and not just believing that, but would be led to having faith in Him to the point that you would have salvation from your sins. And so the main purpose of this text that we're going to look at this morning, this sign, if you will, verse number 11, is that it's going to contribute to help us understand who Jesus is and develop faith in Him. And so when you look back, by the way, in the first century, and this goes even into the time of the church in the book of Acts, you're going to find that miraculous things attested to the authority or the legitimacy of the individual producing those things. In Acts chapter 2, verse 22, for instance, Peter on the day of Pentecost said, Jesus was attested or shown to you by God with many mighty works and wonders and signs. In other words, what he was saying was God showed that Jesus was legitimate, that He was who He claimed to be because He could do miracles and wonders and works, mighty things that could not be explained in any other way. In Mark chapter 4, verse 41, Jesus would calm the storm on the Sea of Galilee, and when He did that, His apostles would say, who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey Him? So when Jesus is able to do miraculous works, it's going to verify His identity, but it's also going to lead people to establish a faith in Him that would lead to their salvation. All right, so as we think about the purpose of chapter 2, this account, this first sign in the book of John, we're going to kind of work our way through it verse by verse. All right, verse number 1. On the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus also was invited to the wedding with His disciples. All right, so if you know anything geographically about the nation of Israel during the time of Jesus, on the western side of the Jordan River, and this is the way you're looking at it, it's going to be the left side. If you look at a map, on the southernmost area, you're going to have Judea or the idea of Jerusalem. That's going to be more the hub of where Judaism really emanated and was sourced from. The city of Jerusalem was the centerpiece, if you will, of the Jewish nation. That was where a lot of the official things would be done. Then right on top of Judea, you're going to have Samaria. Okay? And if you remember anything about the Samaritans, they were distant cousins to the Jews. They had intermarried over time, going back to the captivity years of the Old Testament. And so there is some relationship. The Samaritans do largely worship the same God, but in different ways and through different means. And then on top of Samaria, you're going to have the nation of Galilee. And Galilee was separated into a northern section and a southern section. When we read of Jesus' activities in the area of Galilee, He is in the southernmost portion, north of Samaria, but south of the most northern region there of Galilee. And this is most of the time going to be in and around the northern head of the Sea of Galilee. And so Cana of Galilee is going to be located in that region, in the southernmost part of Galilee. It is the hometown, it seems, from John chapter 21 and verse 2, of Nathanael, one of Jesus' followers. Jesus' hometown of Nazareth, most people believe was about 7 or 8 miles away from this. Okay, so this is an area that Jesus is familiar with, and Jesus' mother certainly would be familiar with, and we're not exactly sure how the invitation is given. Cana at this time was considered to be a very small town. I don't know if I have really a comparison of that, but many of us are from outlying areas and we grew up in very small communities where everybody knew everybody. That's probably the way it was in Cana of Galilee. Most people there probably knew one another, and in their day and time, a marriage feast would have been one of the greatest celebrations in their town. It would be something that probably everyone would be invited to, and just to kind of give you a little bit of background about the wedding. Once a man and a woman decided to become betrothed or engaged, all right, there would be a negotiation between the two families as to who would bring what to the marriage, and there would be a price from the groom to the bride's family that would be paid, if you will, for that particular lady to be given in marriage. And after that betrothal, it was a very serious thing. The groom would then prepare for his new upcoming bride-to-be a home. A lot of times it might be an establishment that would be in conjunction to his father's house. And so in our world today, we would think about it like this. They're building on an addition to the father's house, and that's going to be where the newlywed couple is going to live. It may be on the land. You remember that land in that day and time was handed down from one family to another to another. So maybe on this particular plot of land that the family has, there's going to be the building of a house. It's not customary in that day and time to move to where her parents are at. That's different in that regard. It was the assumed thing to do to build and to live on that land. And so that would take some time. It might be that some things might have to be done to get ready to support this wife in marriage. For instance, there may be some new ground that has to be cleared or broken up for planting, things of that nature. But there is a time of preparation, and so most of the time you get into historical readings, it's going to be anywhere from about 9 months to a year and a half that groom is going to go and get everything ready. And by the way, one of the things that he has to get ready is the marriage feast. That's his responsibility in that day and time. When we think about the marriages of today, the groom generally, what is his part to play in the marriage? All right, come on, ladies, you know. All right, you got a reception, usually on the night before, right? When everybody gets together, you practice and all of that. Okay, that falls to the husband's family. What falls to the bride's family? All right, it's the actual ceremony day and the reception and all of that. Okay, they flipped that. That was the responsibility of the groom to put all of that together. Now, when all of this was done and ready, that's when the call would be sent, if you will, to the bride's family to say, everything is ready, come to the marriage feast. That's the way it worked in places like Cana of Galilee in the first century times. Now, this would be a very big party, a very big, important gathering, a gathering that would have beyond just the marriage part of it and the idea of this wedding. You would have, in addition to that, a very big social gathering. The ceremony would take place usually with a smaller group of people, but then for the marriage feast, it might last up to a week or so, probably just about everybody in town would be there. All right, so that is the situation. We're not sure how it is that Jesus and his disciples are invited. Maybe they are related to one or both of the individuals that are going to be married. We're not exactly sure, but we just know that Jesus, his disciples, and his mother is there. All right, verse number 3, there is a problem that develops. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." All right, now, if we are in a wedding reception today and we run out of punch, all right, that's probably not a good thing, right? But it's not the end of the world, right? You can go get some water, you can go get some Cokes, you can go get some other drinks, right? And maybe substitute. At the very least, you can provide water. It's not, but it's not considered to be the end of the world, okay? Now, in Jesus' day and time, this was a very serious matter because it was a very poor reflection on the groom. It was his job to have everything planned. And that includes not running out of food or drink. And so when they run out of wine, that is a very poor reflection. And you can kind of imagine a father-in-law to be kind of looking over when this happens, saying, well, if he can't even prepare for the guest at a wedding feast, how in the world is he going to support and care for my daughter in the years that they're going to be? That's the kind of thing that you have. And you also have a social stigma of people in the community kind of saying the same thing. This is a major faux pas. This is a major issue, okay? Far more than it would be today because it had the social ramifications of it as well. And so you have a major issue that crops up, okay? Now, notice that when the wine runs out, who takes action? Who's the first person to mention anything or say anything here? All right, it's Jesus' mother, okay? Now, maybe she has some official capacity. Maybe she has been put in charge of some aspects of the marriage feast. We're not sure. Maybe she is just a concerned relative. We're not exactly sure. But she goes to who with the issue? She goes to Jesus. Somebody might ask the question, why would she go to Jesus? Why wouldn't she go to someone else? Why wouldn't she go to the groom's father, for instance, and things of that nature? Here's just a theory that I'll give you. I can't prove it one way or the other, but a lot of people believe that at this point in time, Joseph has died. And so in that day and time, if you have a widowed lady, who does she look to for help in anything? Her sons. And Jesus is a son. So she comes to Jesus and she shares with him this issue. Verse number 4, Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." Now, reading this from this side of history, we understand what Jesus is saying here. Jesus is basically saying it's not time for me to begin a ministry. The first miracle that Jesus does that has notoriety and publicity to it, you're going to find that he is from that day forward going to be targeted by religious leaders. He is going to be someone that people want to be around. And Jesus basically here says, that's not what I am ready to do. My hour has not yet come. Now, look at mom in what she does here. Verse number 5. His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." So what did Jesus tell his mom? All right. Jesus, can you help us out here? What does Jesus say? So what his mom says is, to the servant says, "Hey, whatever he tells you, you do it." What does that mean if we're a son, a daughter, and our parent says that? All right, yeah, you said no, but really I'm anticipating and expecting you to do something about this, okay? So there's a moment here that Jesus kind of, okay, my hour's not yet come, but there is this need that should be taken care of. All right, look at verse number 6. Now there were 6 stone water pots or jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. I'll mention this morning in our lesson in the worship hour, the Mishnah, the Jewish Mishnah. If you know anything about the oral law, they had ceremonial washing after ceremonial washings. Literally dozens of special kind of washings. You were supposed to wash before this and after that, and they had all of these, if you will, oral traditions that people should do around the idea of washings. And so there are 6 of these water jars, okay, and they hold 20 to 30 gallons of water apiece. All right, so Jesus says, verse number 7, said to the servants, fill the jars with water, and they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast. So they took it. All right, so just kind of put yourself in the shoes of one of the servants. Jesus tells them, they do exactly what Jesus' mother had told them to do, which is do whatever he tells you to do. Whatever he commands you, you just do it. So Jesus says, put water in all of these pots, fill them up. And now, once they're filled, take it to the master of the feast. If you're one of the servants taking this beverage to the master of the feast, what are you probably thinking? You kind of think I've been set up, right? What did we put into the water pots? Water, right? That's what we put in there. Jesus is telling us to draw some out and take it to the master of the feast. By the way, the master of the feast probably would have been a very close friend of the groom who is probably very distraught at this time. I can imagine the servants go to the master of the feast and say, hey, we've got something for you to try. When he says, what is that? They probably say, well, we think it may be water. Okay, there's a lot that goes on here that we don't see in the text that probably took place. Okay, so that's the situation. Notice verse number 9. When the master of the feast tasted the water now become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, now notice this in verse 10, everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now. So it's not water that he tastes, okay? It is this wine. It is this beverage that comes from the grape, right? It is this beverage that he tastes, and he immediately recognizes there is a difference in the quality. Now, why would there be a difference in the quality throughout a feast? Well, number one, money was not unlimited in that day and time. You would serve in that day and time, if you had a 7-day feast, your best first. Why? Because a lot of times people would drop out as that feast would go along. You probably on the last day of the feast wouldn't have as many people there as the first day of the feast. People would have to get back to their jobs or responsibilities, so forth and so on. So you have a bigger crowd, and so as the feast goes along, probably less participants. And so if you want to make a good showing to your community, you're going to have the best first. Now, what does the master of the feast say? You've been holding back on where the best was at. We're serving we've got the best now. Why did we serve this inferior before? And so there is a question there. And it speaks to the quality of the beverage that Jesus makes here, that this is of outstanding quality, especially compared to the first. Now look at how verse number 11 kind of ends. This, the first of his signs, chapter 20, verses 30 through 31, Jesus is doing this so people would know that he is the Son of God and they would come to faith in him. This is the first of his signs Jesus did at Cana in Galilee and manifested his glory. Now notice what it says there. And his disciples what? Believed in him. In other words, exactly what you see in chapter 20, verses 30 through 31 takes place. There are people, his disciples, who witness this, who say, I believe that this Jesus is the Son of God. And they are going to follow him. They are going to be convinced that salvation is in him. All right, so that is the story in essence that we work through in that regard. All right, I want us to mention a few things to take away today for our perspective. First is to address the elephant in the room. Jesus did not create a beverage intended to make people drunk. I believe we can safely say that, because Habakkuk chapter 2 and verse 15 pronounces woe upon those who would try to get their neighbor drunk, okay? Now, in the Greek world, the word oinos could mean a variety of things. It could mean an unfermented type of grape juice, fruit of the vine, if you will. But it also could be designated to mention an alcoholic type of grape juice. And so we have to acknowledge that with the word oinos here. But we also have to understand this in first century times. They did not have in that day and time water treatment plants like we do today. They did not have many means to purify water like we do today. If you had water and it was unclean and you needed to make it drinkable, consumable by human beings, what would they do in that day and time? They would sometimes, in fact, it was the beverage of the day, take a fermented grape juice to some level and they would mix it. Now, I will tell you that when you go back and you look at the way they mix that, this is not anywhere close to what we call wine today. When we talk about the alcoholic content in things like wine and beer and liquor today, the alcoholic content in those kind of beverages today far, far exceed this common beverage of the first century that was concocted primarily for the purpose of simply killing germs, okay? Now, what I'm going to tell you is this was most likely a beverage that was made by Jesus that would never, in a week's time or even longer, would ever bring anybody to any type of drunkenness. But it would be sanitary, and it would be good. It's a possibility this is just pure grape juice. That was one of the beverages of that day and time. It could be that it is this mixture that is common in that day and time. That's what we draw from this particular passage. But trying to take this passage and apply it to our world today is kind of comparing apples and oranges because of the nature of the drink that you have before you, okay? So that's kind of addressing the elephant in the room, talking about the kind of wine that was present, the beverage that was made. I think we can safely assume this is nothing like what we know today called wine, beer, liquor, things of that nature. All right, besides that, there are two things that I want us to understand. Number one, we see here, and this goes back to the purpose of John's writing, we see his ability to change something, to transform it. Question, how long does it take if you have this, whether it's grape juice or this watered down drink, how long does it take for that process? All right, the water, that's pretty easy. You can get water today. How long does it take to produce grape juice? Anybody know? All right, where do you have to start? If you're going to have grape juice, where do you start? All right, you got to have grapes, but I want you to think even more than that. You got to start earlier than that, don't you? Because the grapes come from where? The plant. So you have to start with what? Planting the grapevine. All right, if we plant the grapevine in June, do we have grapes in July? Is that the way that works? No. 2-3 years, from what I understand, in this region of the world, it would take a grapevine to become mature enough that it would produce. All right, so the normal process would at least take 3 years just because of the growth of the plant. But you have to take the grape, you have to harvest the grape, then you have to tread it out, right, and produce the juice, and that would be a process, and that might even take a period of time. Then however you would house it, however you would store it, whether it's in some kind of bag or some type of other container in that day and time, you might have another month's process. Okay, so in order to have this beverage that includes fruit of the vine or this grape juice of some sort or another, you've got a process that takes 2, 3, or 4 years. How long does it take Jesus to do this? boy, he circumvents it just like that. That's how quick he can transform. And that is a testament of his power. That is a testament of what he is able to do. He is able to, if you will, bypass that. And by the way, there's none of us that could do that. We have to go through that natural. Jesus was able to circumvent all of that on this occasion. And that's what people would have noticed in that day and time. But here's something else that I want us to notice in this story. Why does Jesus do this? He tells Mary, my hour's not yet come. In other words, it is not time yet for me to be doing these kind of things. What moves Jesus to action here? What do you think? Action. You know, shortest verse in the English Bible comes in John chapter 11. It is what? Jesus wept. We know that verse, but do you know why Jesus wept? Why did he weep? Why was he crying? All right. His friend Lazarus had died. He's not crying about that. He knows what he's going to do. What is he going to do? He's going to raise him from the grave. So he's not crying about all of that. Why is he crying? He is crying because he sees Mary and Martha, sisters to this beloved man, who are mourning. That's why he cries, because he has compassion. If you ask me, Carrie, why does he do this? Why does, if you will, he push the fast forward button and go ahead and perform this miracle? The answer to that is he cared. He cared about this groom and his family who were going to have a social stigma, some commentators say, maybe for the rest of their life. You know, we have a phrase that says, it's going to be hard to live this down, whatever it is. And that was going to be the case with the groom here and his family. It was going to follow him for many, many years. Jesus was concerned about this man. He was concerned about the social stigma that was going to come along with the event that we read here. I want us to think about this today. I want you to think about how this applies to us. Obviously, we look at this and we learn kind of what John's intent was, the miraculous things. Does God still have power today to transform? Yeah. Romans 8:28 says that God has the ability to transform what? Bad situations to bring what? Good things from them. That's transformation, right? Does he have to go through the normal channels to do that like you and I have to go through? No. How quickly can God do that today? Just like that, okay? When we talk about the transformation of a Christian, we're going to begin this morning a series. I'm going to call it the Jesus brand. And we're going to talk about what the world sees in Christ's followers. And what you find in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 is if anyone is in Christ, he is a new what? Creation. Who makes that change in our lives? It's God. Doesn't God have the ability to transform us? To change us? Doesn't God have that ability today? Yes, indeed, He does. Okay? Through the gospel, through the revelation that He has given us, He has the ability to transform us and change us. God is in the transforming business. Jesus was in the transforming business. And when you and I go back and we revisit the story from John chapter 2 this morning, we are reminded of that. That God has the ability to change both things and people. That was true then in the gospel accounts, and it's true today. But number two, I'm going to submit to you that God cares for us just like Jesus cared for the groom and his family here. A lot of times we wonder if God really cares, don't we? The things that I'm going through, sometimes the more mundane, does God even care about that? I believe God cares about everything that goes on in our life. That God is concerned about that. He knows, we read in Scripture that He knows the amount of hair on our heads. He knows our thoughts. He knows our beginnings. He knows our end. He knows everything about us. but he is compassionate and he cares. I believe Jesus here acted because of his care and compassion for this groom and the groom's family. And I take heart in knowing that if Jesus cared enough about that situation for him, God cares enough about my situations today to act on my behalf as well. And that encourages me, and that cheers me in times when I think, just things are all just crumbling around me and they're just going negative in every way, shape, and form. And so, two things that I want us to take away as our time is up today. Number one, the power of God, the power of Jesus Christ is very much still present today. Doesn't work in the same ways as he did then, obviously, but he still works in our life. The power of God is still on display every single day of our life. But number two, God cares for us. God cares for you. He cares for me. And we see an example of that in this story. Appreciate you being with us this morning. Hope you have a good day and look forward to having John back with us, Lord willing, next Sunday. You are dismissed.